Good evening. My name is Trudy Christian, and I am the founder of the Dominica PCOS Association. And it is my pleasure this evening to be the moderator for this panel, which promises to be a very, very informative and engaging one. Our topic this evening is endometriosis in the Caribbean, our experiences, and examining the current needs of the region. And of course, we are engaging in regional collaboration, which is so awesome. And we have presenters from across the region. So we are definitely in for a very engaging and inclusive discussion about endometriosis. So we will, first of all, I will introduce the members of the team. We have Begho from St. Kitts and Nevis, Julia Mandeville from Barbados, Odelia Thomas from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Abeesha Toussaint from Trinidad and Tobago, Sandrina Nevis from Jamaica, and Rovin Fervier from St. Lucia, and myself, Trudy Christian from Dominica. No flag, but remember, Dominica is where I am from. Unfortunately, my background is not working out, but the Nature Isle, that is where I'm from. So that's our team, and we are very, very excited about talking this evening about endometriosis at the end of Endometriosis Awareness Month. Our objectives. So this evening we plan to describe endometriosis, what is it exactly and what are the implications. And we also want to, with this discussion, raise awareness and increase the education surrounding endometriosis. We want to highlight the resources which exist for people who suffer with endometriosis and the tools and the information that is available for self-advocacy. And as always, we want to outline a path forward. So not just leaving it at the problem stage, but what are the steps that can be taken as we move forward as a region and respond to endometriosis. Our topics, we will start off with the signs, the symptoms, and the diagnosis of endometriosis, which I will present. And then we will move on to barriers to diagnosis and treatment. We'll talk about the importance of early intervention, lived experience of somebody who has endometriosis, mental health implications, and patient education, advocacy, and empowerment. And we'll end with considering the multidisciplinary approach. When each presenter is about to come on, I will give an introduction of that presenter. So of course you will know who is presenting each topic. And we have decided that each presenter should have about 10 minutes in which to give their presentation. And what I will be doing as the moderator, it's not something that I enjoy doing, but if somebody is about 1 minute off the end of their time, I will show them this card, yellow, endometriosis awareness color, yellow. And if their time has expired, of course, within reasonable limits, I will show this, which is supposed to be red, but I don't know how it looks. But presenters, this means almost ready to conclude. This means that you should definitely conclude. And our disclaimer, which is so important, we just want everybody to know that the contents of this presentation, such as the text, the graphics, the images, and all of the material contained within the content are for informational purposes only, and they do not constitute medical advice. We are not intending for this content to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, and you should always, always, always seek the advice of a qualified health provider with any issue that you may have or any medical concern that you may have. So this is for information purposes. It is not constituting medical advice this evening. Okay, so I am first up, and my disclaimer before I even begin and introduce myself as the moderator, I am a biology lecturer. And so my context of endometriosis is strictly from the biology perspective. What is endometriosis and its actual biological origin and what it's about? That's what I will be presenting. I do not suffer with endometriosis. I am not an endo warrior. So the lived experience and the shared experience will come from my colleagues. But I will give you the medical information and the biological information. That's what I will do. So that's my disclaimer. I also hold a master's in public health. So in that light, I will present to you what I know about endometriosis, the signs, the symptoms, and of course, how it is diagnosed. Okay, so getting started. What is endometriosis? I mentioned I'm a teacher, I'm a lecturer at the local community college. And so I like to really explain things in the most basic way that I can. The lining of a womb or uterus is called the endometrium. And this lining, just by the name endometrium, it means the lining of the womb. Now, what endometriosis is when cells which are like the endometrium, so cells which closely resemble in their behavior the endometrium, are found in places other than the lining of the uterus. So endometriosis is defined as a medical condition where those cells which are like the lining of the womb are found in other parts of the body. So instead of these cells, the endometrial cells which are found lining the womb and normally respond to hormones and normally shed with every menstrual period, cells which resemble these cells and behave like these cells, they're found in other parts of the body and on other organs besides organs of the reproductive tract. So this causes inflammation and pain, and this inflammation and pain might be pretty severe, particularly before and during a menstrual period. Because remember, the tissue is responding to hormones just like the endometrial tissue would. So I have here a graphic displaying basically where some of this endometrial-like tissue could be found. And on this diagram of the female reproductive tract, I have here some endometrial-like tissue being found on the outside of the uterus. It is showing some endometrial-like tissue on the fallopian tubes, on the ovaries. Okay, so this is just a depiction of the growth of this irregular tissue on places or organs in the reproductive tract. However, this is not what endometriosis is restricted to. Of course, there may be the appearance of endometrial-like tissue on organs outside of the pelvic region or outside of the reproductive system. And endometriosis is known to affect organs such as the lungs or organs in the thoracic cage, also abdominal organs. So it is not restricted to pelvic organs only. This diagram shows pelvic organs, but it is not restricted to just that locality. What are some of the symptoms? So once again, I am presenting this from purely the textbook knowledge. Other people will talk about what are their very real lived experiences and the symptoms that they experience. But textbook knowledge indicates that people with endometriosis, women with endometriosis, will experience painful periods and heavy menstrual bleeding, sometimes spotting between periods, abdominal pain, which may occur with the menstrual cycle or outside of that cycle, pain during sexual intercourse, which is often not spoken about, but it is a very real concern for many people who suffer with endometriosis, and pain with bowel movements and with emptying the bladder, lower back pain, pelvic pain. We see that with pain being very repetitive in the symptoms of endometriosis. So of course, it is a major concern when everything associated with something is causing pain. Fatigue and feeling bloated as some other symptoms, and a major one or a major concern for many is infertility. So we will continue talking about these things as we proceed. There are some symptoms that are not as common as the ones that I just mentioned. but some people with endometriosis have endometrial-like tissue growing on, as I said, some of the organs in the thorax, like the lungs, and that can cause spontaneous pneumothoraxes, so the rupture of the lungs or the collapse of the lungs, bleeding from cesarean sections or from any sort of surgical opening or wound, and sometimes some bulging and painful lumps. So these are the rare or the less common symptoms that some may experience with endometriosis. What are the stages of endometriosis? So the new information shows that there is a classification that is very good, or a classification that really breaks down the stages of endometriosis that have been found in different patients. The American Society of Reproductive Medicine classified endometriosis as being either stage 1, which is minimal, stage 2, which is mild, stage 3, which is moderate, and stage 4, which is severe. Now, these stages were given based on certain aspects of the endometrial tissue which was observed. So how spread is the endometrial tissue? How deep does it occur? Is there any scarring which is visible? Is there inflammation which is visible? So these are some of the ways in which the classification scheme came about. So I have a diagram which, right, I have a diagram which shows how the classification scheme works. Now, if somebody is classified as having stage 1 or minimal endometriosis, you will find that there is the presence of the endometrial-like tissue in very small areas of the pelvic cavity and a very surface type presentation. So sometimes on the outer surface of the uterus, but very small pockets. However, it is important to note that stage 1 or minimal endometriosis does not refer to the level of pain or the appearance of symptoms in that person. So my gynecologist said to me just recently that some women with endometriosis, when you look at the endometrial-like tissue, it is so very small. It is not a lot of endometrial-like tissue found in these exopelvic areas, but the person is reporting extreme pain and extreme symptoms. So the stage does not necessarily mean that the symptom level correlates or the severity of the symptoms correlates. In stage 2, which is called mild, you have the presence of the endometrial-like tissue a bit deeper in locale, so it's not just surface, but it penetrates or it infiltrates the tissues a bit more, and you might start to see some scarring and inflammation with stage 2. Scarring. In stage 3, which is moderate, you have the presence of this tissue in several areas. It is fairly widespread, and you start to have adhesions which may be forming if somebody has stage 3 or moderate adhesions, so where the organs are forming these kind of connections to each other. And by stage 4, which is severe, you have very, very, very penetrative endometrial-like tissue. You have an abundance of scar tissue, and you have a whole lot of adhesions. So that is seen in the last diagram, a lot of adhesions by stage 4. Endometriosis, though, is not like cancer. So we're not essentially progressing through the stages like how cancer spreads, but it is classified in those 4 different stages. How do people get diagnosed with endometriosis? The gold standard would be to have laparoscopic surgery or keyhole surgery, where a small tube with a camera at the end would be inserted, and the physician would be able to visualize the presence of that endometrial-like tissue, probably locating cysts, which are sometimes called chocolate cysts, and visualizing that. But some physicians, before they get to that gold standard, they might do a pelvic exam, they might refer you for an ultrasound, which will not definitively, show endometriosis, but it might identify cysts that may be present. And some physicians will also recommend an MRI, which might help them to view the size and location of any endometrial implants or any endometriomas. So that is the diagnosis, but gold standard would be to have laparoscopy or laparoscopic surgery. And that is it for my portion of this presentation. I am going to hand over at this. Oh, no, but before I do, questions are coming in, so I should take the questions as they come in. Yes.
You can. I think we can play it by ear. So the first question is, my main concern is, can endometriosis be misdiagnosed with symptoms of fibroids, as pain is a common symptom? So how do you differentiate? And I think with the slide, your previous slide, you outlined the difference with diagnoses there.
Okay, so moving forward, what we'll do, people who are logged on can pose their questions in the Q&A section, and then we will have a response to questions time frame at the end, right? So okay, so once those questions are recorded in the Q&A section, we will address them as we proceed. Okay. All right, so we're moving on to the next presenter, and we are going to be hearing from Begho from St. Kitts and Nevis. She's a former scientific program manager at the National Cancer Research Institute, and she's the founder of Lake Health and Wellbeing based in St. Kitts. And the aim of Lake Health and Wellbeing is to improve health and well-being of the local, regional, and online community. So Abby will be presenting this evening the barriers to diagnosis and treatment of endometriosis. Abby?
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to share my screen. So just give me a few seconds. And I'm going to share my screen. Okay, wonderful. So can everybody see, hear me clearly? Okay. So I am literally just going to pick off just from where we left off around diagnosis. So I am the founder of Lake Health and Wellbeing. So what we've been doing is we've been conducting a research project to explore the experience of women living with fibroids. Now, we do know that women with various gynecological conditions like fibroids, PCOS, and endometriosis have very similar concerns and very similar challenges. So I'm hoping that the lessons that we have learned from the fibroids experience will be useful for you all that are going through your endometriosis experience. So before we get to women being diagnosed, we know that there are a lot of delays in terms of women getting diagnosed. So what I want to share with you is a little bit of our research around what are some of the barriers to diagnosis and treatment. And this was based on some work that we did where we interviewed women who have had fibroids. And for the purposes of time, I'm not going to go through every single theme. I've just picked out some interesting themes that came from that research project. So when it comes to barriers to diagnosis and treatment, these can be divided into two sort of categories. We have barriers that are patient-related, and then we have barriers that are related to the healthcare system. So when we're thinking about barriers that are related to patient barriers, these are factors related to women's help-seeking behavior. So what is preventing women from seeking help when they have fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS? That's what I'm going to go through. And then what are some of the things, once women have recognized that something is wrong and they get to the healthcare system, what are some of the barriers that they encounter in terms of getting diagnosed? So if we first look at patient-related barriers to diagnosis, it really starts at the beginning. So we have women that do not necessarily have a large amount of awareness of the symptoms of various different conditions, whether that be fibroids, endometriosis. And there's a lot of normalizing of abnormal menstrual symptoms. So what I mean by that is that, you know, we're not necessarily aware of what a normal versus an abnormal period looks and feels like. So if people are not aware of that, they're not aware that something is wrong, and therefore they're not going to seek help. They're going to suffer with these abnormal menstrual symptoms for a very long time until it actually becomes very severe, and then they go and seek help. So we have these issues that are sort of preventing women from seeking help and creating a barrier to diagnosis. It's the lack of awareness and the normalizing of abnormal menstrual symptoms. The lack of awareness of gynecological conditions, the symptoms of gynecological conditions is a major issue. These conditions are very common, but we do not have a lot of information out there around what the signs and symptoms are. So women cannot really take action and seek help promptly. So that's the first barrier. The second barrier we have that we encountered when we did our research was sort of beliefs about menstrual health. So there are various cultural beliefs and myths that are actually preventing people from seeking help and getting up and saying, actually, something is wrong. So for example, one thing that came up was, people just like women sometimes just expect that your period should be painful. And so therefore, because there's that expectation, there's that belief that your periods should be painful, women are sort of putting up with a lot of pain, thinking that this is normal, which is kind of links into the previous point. And so therefore, they're not seeking help. And there are lots of other beliefs about menstrual health that are actually preventing women from getting up and seeking help. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So that's the second patient-related barrier. We have a lot of beliefs about menstrual health that are not accurate and they're not correct, and it's stopping women from seeking help. Finally, we also have fear, and this is an interesting one. We have women that are going through a lot, having symptoms, and they're worried that their symptom might be something really serious. But that fear is so intense that it's actually leading to inaction. People are thinking, okay, there's something really wrong with me, but I really don't want to know. So we have a lot of women that are kind of sort of have put up a barrier and saying, if I have something serious at this point in time, I really don't want to know. And that is stopping them from actually getting a diagnosis and actually getting treatment and being able to really address the issue that they have. So we have fear around what the symptoms are, what they could be, and that's leading to delays. There is also, as we know, a lot of stigma and embarrassment around period-related symptoms. So because of this stigma and embarrassment, that is creating a barrier and preventing women from seeking help. And so we have to sort of get away from the stigma associated with menstrual health issues so that women feel comfortable enough to speak about these issues and feel comfortable enough to get out there and seek help. So, and that just goes another point, which is just the fact that there's a lot of discomfort around discussing menstrual health issues. We have women that are within the same household that don't really want to discuss their menstrual health issues. So we have sisters that don't want to discuss their menstrual health issues. We have mother-daughter that don't want to discuss their menstrual health issues. So there's a lot of stigma, a lot of discomfort around discussing these issues. And if you're not talking about them, you're not going to be able to get the support and help that you need in order to get a diagnosis. Confidentiality concerns. So one issue that came up with people is, we live in small islands, people are very private, these issues are very sensitive, and people were concerned whether their confidentiality will be maintained by healthcare professionals. So if I go to Nurse X or Dr. Y tomorrow, will my business be on the street? I'm not sure, so therefore I'm not going to go and seek the help that I need because I really do not want my personal menstrual health issues to be discussed with other people. So there was some confidentiality concerns. And then just really all this discomfort around, will the administrative person at the clinic or at the hospital become aware that I have a menstrual health issue? How will they see me? So all of these sort of confidentiality concerns, and that is also stopping women from sort of seeking help, and it's creating a barrier to treatment and diagnosis. Women also mentioned there was just a general lack of guidance. So there was sort of a lack of clarity on what women with challenging periods should do. So if I have painful periods, if I'm vomiting, if I'm doing all these if I have all these kinds of symptoms, what is it that I should do? Should I go to a gynecologist? Should I go to my GP? There was just a lot of lack of clarity around what should I do? What are the next steps? Is it a problem? Is it not a problem? So there's just this general lack of information and support. And lack of information and lack of support means you have women that are disempowered. They don't have the information that they need to really take action and do what they need to do in terms of getting a diagnosis. Family commitments. So as women, we have a lot of commitments. We're mothers, we're working, we're wives. So we're prioritizing everyone and everything else above ourselves. Our health tends to become sort of secondary. We're looking after everybody else and we're not necessarily prioritizing our health. And therefore that creates a barrier to us receiving a diagnosis because we keep on putting it off and saying, well, I have other things that are priority. So that is an issue as well. So then another issue that came up was the lack of confidence in the healthcare system. So again, there are issues around, am I comfortable enough does the healthcare system have all the facilities to diagnose and treat me properly and accurately? So all of those issues were raised during our research project. So we have women sometimes waiting because they would rather be diagnosed and treated abroad. Obviously that requires money, that requires resources. So women are waiting sort of to save up the money to really seek healthcare and care abroad. So that was creating a barrier to diagnosis because there's a lack of confidence in your local healthcare system to really deal with the issues that you have. Another issue that was interesting was religious beliefs. So we found occasions where women were uncomfortable discussing sexual and reproductive health issues due to their religious beliefs. Again, that creates a barrier. You're uncomfortable discussing these issues in public because you're afraid of judgment. And so therefore that was creating barriers to diagnosis. Something interesting that came up was the location of help seeking. So where is it that women are going to seek help? So what we found was that there were several women who, when they were having menstrual health symptoms, such as really a bad abdominal pain or heavy bleeding, they would actually go to the emergency department. And actually they would be at the emergency department every month. If you visit the emergency department, if you have these kind of symptoms, really what they're going to do is they're going to treat the symptoms. They're going to treat the pain. They're going to treat the heavy bleeding or whatever it is. They're going to treat the symptom. They're not actually going to give you a diagnosis. So what we're finding is that the women were recurringly visiting the emergency department. Meanwhile, if you have a menstrual health symptom and you go straight to your GP or your gynecologist, you're much more likely to have a faster diagnosis. So depending on where women actually sought help, that could create a barrier or actually be a facilitator. So if women visited the emergency department, that tended to be a barrier because women are being treated for their symptoms and not getting a diagnosis. So they'll just be going back and forth to the emergency department and getting painkillers rather than they be trying to understand the cause of the symptom. But that is the nature of the emergency department. Okay, so I'm running out of time, so I'm going to quickly go through the last few slides. So some of the facilitators in terms of what is it that actually helps women get a prompt diagnosis were friends and family. They empowered women to take action. They quickly, immediately recognized that something was wrong in their family member, so they encouraged them to seek help. Age, we found older women were more likely to recognize when something was wrong. And if women had very severe symptoms or significant menstrual cycle change, then they were more likely to basically go and seek help. And then if you are a young lady that goes for regular annual checkups, you're more likely to pick up fibroids, endometriosis or whatever. So have a regular gynecological checkup. So those were the facilitators. I'm going to quickly go through the healthcare related barriers to diagnosis. And I just picked 3. These were the ones that I thought were interesting from the work that we're doing. First of all were the perceptions about the patient. So when the patient goes to the doctor makes a lot of sort of assumptions around the patient. So for younger women, oh, you just have bad periods, you'll be okay, don't worry about it. Older women, oh, it's part of the aging process, you'll be okay. You're overweight, oh, you lose weight, you'll be fine. That will help with your symptoms. Oh, you're a woman, you must be pregnant. You've got abnormal period, you must be pregnant. So all of these assumptions are creating like barriers to diagnosis. Women are going back and forth. Okay, it's just bad periods. Oh no, okay, maybe I'm pregnant. So all of these were creating barriers. What we found also, if women had a negative first encounter with the healthcare system, then they would discontinue that diagnostic process and just be like, you know what, I'm going to deal with this on my own. They may not know what's wrong with them, but they will just deal with it on their own. And that was creating a barrier. So a negative first encounter could be the way the doctor spoke to them, the way the nurse spoke to them, the way the administrator spoke to them. That would then just make them disengage. Again, the setting, I've already spoke about that. So if the patient visited their doctor, regular doctor, or the gynecologist, they were more likely to be diagnosed faster. So I'm going to just end off by saying, in terms of health, if what facilitates is having a good patient-doctor relationship. The doctor is proactive, they take really quick action when menstrual symptoms are reported, they have easy access to diagnostic tools, there's a seamless and quick referral process from GP to specialist doctor, and also the location, which I've said like 3 times, just to stress that. So just to conclude, there are several barriers to diagnosing gynecological conditions. Some of these are patient-related, some of these are institutional, and the barriers really can be addressed through patient education, empowerment, and advocacy, a focus on patient-centered care, and making the diagnostic process more efficient, regardless of where the patient seeks help. So whether they seek help with the GP, emergency department, or the gynecologist. So I think that's my time. So thank you very much. And I'm going to hand over to the next speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Abby, for your presentation and some very interesting things came up here, we need to speak about religion and how it may pose, itself as a barrier, and cultural beliefs, and, and even the perception that the healthcare personnel may have about a patient, creating a barrier to diagnosis. So thank you so much, Abby, for that.
You're welcome.
We will move along to our next presenter, who is from Trinidad and Tobago. That's Abeesha Toussaint, and she will be presenting on the importance of early intervention. Just to let you know a little bit about Abeesha, she is the founder and the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Endometriosis Association. She's a communications, media, and public relations specialist, and she has a special interest in endometriosis and health communication. She currently drafts policies, writes proposals, and manages projects for her employer. And she serves on the inaugural steering committee of the World Endometriosis Organization. So Abeesha, it is my pleasure to welcome you to give your presentation this evening on the importance of early intervention.
Thank you so much, Trudy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. One minute, I'm just pulling it up. Okay, there we go. So my topic this afternoon is the importance of early intervention. And as Trudy said, I'm Abeesha, and I'm associated with the Trinidad and Tobago Endometriosis Association. Yeah, I just want to tell you a little bit about the Trinidad and Tobago Endometriosis Association. It's a registered nonprofit that represents all those affected by endometriosis. We work with all stakeholders to improve health, to improve endometriosis care in Trinidad and Tobago. The estimated figure of endometriosis patients in TNT is approximately 35,000. This information is solely for the purposes of the Trinidad and Tobago Endometriosis Association. In 2018, we would have conducted a quality of patient care survey, which revealed to us that 87% of the participants were very dissatisfied with the level of endometriosis care in Trinidad and Tobago. So our role really as an association is to be that agent of change. I know Trudy would have touched on what is endometriosis, so I'm just going to go over it very briefly. It's a condition where tissue similar to the lining of the uterus is found elsewhere in the body. And the thing about this definition is that it really doesn't do justice to what the patient experienced or the disease itself. And so when you hear that definition, you're going to ask yourself, so what? Why is there so much talk about endometriosis? And what is this early intervention hype about? And that last question is where my presentation will focus this afternoon. And to help you to understand what the hype is about, why early intervention is necessary, and for you to get a proper understanding of the impact of endometriosis and the complexity of the disease, I'd like you to meet Zoe. Now, on any given day, you'll find Zoe across on Instagram on Praiseworthy. She's a registered nurse, but I borrowed her so that she can portray an endometriosis patient. She's currently an endometriosis patient who is trying to navigate that storm of endometriosis. And there's always something about a story that hits home and will help others to understand exactly what the endo patient is going through. And everything about this story is true, with the exception of her name. I had to change her name for obvious reasons. And this is Zoe's story. She's an endometriosis patient and a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Endometriosis Association. It took her 18 years to receive a diagnosis. She was diagnosed with very severe endometriosis. She underwent 5 surgeries for endometriosis alone, including a hysterectomy. She's currently experiencing debilitating symptoms. She was also diagnosed with correlated conditions. She's a divorcee who has lost her job. She has little to no financial resources. She's socially isolated. She has mental health issues, and she has a very poor quality of life. So by now you should get the impact of endometriosis, the complexity of the disease she's dealing with. Yeah. So now we can look at intervention. But before we go to intervention, I just want to say that diagnosis precedes intervention. And in this case, intervention is defined as a treatment, procedure, or action to prevent or treat disease or improve health. But for the purpose of this presentation, it will be to treat disease or improve health. Ideally, intervention should be within 1 year of the patient experiencing symptoms, but we know that's clearly not the case with endometriosis. I know Trudy would have discussed this thoroughly, so I'm just going to go through it very briefly. So the different types of intervention. So there's medical intervention, surgical intervention. There are also complementary therapies. There's also mental health intervention. These interventions should be patient-centered. The patient plans and goals should be considered, as well as the intervention should be individualized. It should be based on the needs of the patient because we are all different. What will work for Zoe definitely will not work for me. And yes, I am an endometriosis patient. So we are back to Zoe again. And we are looking at the importance of early intervention. And we are looking at Zoe's case and what could have been the ideal outcome for Zoe had she received early intervention. So with early intervention, it would have prevented the progression of the disease because her disease is very advanced. It would have enabled doctors to better manage the disease because we all know what doctors can do in the early stages of the disease. As the disease progresses, it becomes more difficult and challenging for that doctor. It would have avoided or reduced her pain and suffering. She's suffering tremendously. She has suffered tremendously and she continues to suffer. It would have reduced or avoided infertility or subfertility issues. She has no children, she loves children, and she really wanted children. It would have increased her productivity level. She's unemployed. She was fired from her job. So that tells us something. It would have significantly reduced the financial burden on her and the health system. It would have afforded a healthier social life and lifted the strain on her support system. Because of her current status, she needs a lot of assistance and help from her relatives and friends. As a matter of fact, she has no friends, just the members of the Trinidad and Tobago Endometriosis Association. It would have prevented or reduced her mental health issues, or in the very least, endometriosis would not have been the cause. Early intervention would have allowed her to enjoy a better quality of life, and that's what we fight for every single day. It would have enabled her to stop existing and start living, and living life is so important, and we all deserve to live life, and Zoe deserves that too. So that in a nutshell is the importance of early intervention. Early intervention coupled with quality intervention. Now, that's where you will get the best result. And when you talk about quality intervention, the question of selecting a doctor arises. How do you go about selecting a doctor? And we get this question very often from persons who call the TTEA, seeking assistance. And this is exactly what we tell them, that the doctor, he or she, should listen and be compassionate. He or she should have a special interest in endometriosis. He or she should be abreast of current research and best practice. He or she should have completed fellowship in minimally invasive gynecologic surgery, preferably excision surgery and endometriosis. He or she should be skilled and experienced surgeon. No, I cannot emphasize that enough. He or she should be a skilled and experienced surgeon when treating endometriosis. He or she should perform endometriosis surgery frequently. And he or she should employ a multidisciplinary, patient-centered, holistic approach. So for the best result, it's not just early intervention, but in early intervention coupled with quality intervention. Yeah? I want to touch a little bit on the roles of endometriosis organizations in early intervention. And yes, we do play a role. And I want to focus a little bit on what the TTEA does. We have a school program, it's called EndoTalk. It was approved by our Ministry of Education. And the objective simply is to raise awareness of endometriosis among our secondary school students and to encourage suspected patients to seek medical attention early. And all those pictures you are seeing on my slide are showing materials associated with the program. Yeah. In conclusion, I'd like to say the early intervention hype is real and necessary. And we need to keep that hype alive, well, and very low. Intervention must be individualized using a multidisciplinary, patient-centered, holistic approach. All stakeholders have a role to play in early intervention, and early and quality intervention can make a huge difference in the patient's quality of life. And we can already see a difference in Zoe. Yeah? And I thank you very much. Trudy, how did I do for time?
Thank you, Abeesha. You did perfectly. You were right on time. So, Abeesha, thank you so much. The importance of early intervention and the improvement in the quality of life for an endometriosis patient if intervention is early and if the care received is of high standard, right? So I really appreciate that presentation. Why the hype of early intervention? I think it was answered very well. And we are doing quite well with time. And so we are moving on to our next presenter, who is from Jamaica. And her name is Sandrina Davis. Sandrina will be talking to us about her lived experience with endometriosis. So she is an endo warrior, and she will be letting us know about her personal experience with this disease. Now, Sandrina is passionate about she's a passionate nonprofit organization leader, and she's the country director of International Samaritan. She advocates for low-income communities and accesses well-needed resources that change the future for persons living in poverty. She's a mom of a handsome 12-year-old who we should maybe get to meet, and she's a podcaster and a fellow endo warrior. I would like to welcome Ms. Sandrina Davis to share with us this evening her lived experience with endometriosis. Sandrina?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Trudy. It is my joy to be here and to also be representing, Jamaica. No problem, man. So happy to be sharing with my regional family, and thank you so much for the invitation. I'm going to try to be as awesome as Abeesha with time. So let me just share my screen and get right in there. Thank you very much again for the invitation, and to say to those who are watching us on this webinar that, listen, even though we're on the presenter side of things, we definitely want your engagement. So feel free to use the chat. I see the Q&A is happening, but feel free to use the chat so that we know that you're with us and that what is being passed on is being received. And so really my topic is the easiest one of all the bunch, to talk about my own experience. And this is going to be my biggest audience I will share my endometriosis story with. So if I choke up anywhere in the middle, just give me a hug, just like Zoe, and we'll go through it together. So essentially, I will say, and you heard it very, very repeatedly when Trudy was introducing endometriosis, that it really is the pain for me. That has been my lived experience. Pain, 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 pain. Should I continue and say pain? But it really has been the pain for me. I want you to just come with me on my own journey. It's a little road, and we're going to have some stops as we keep time and still talk together. Let me just quickly adjust my thing so I can properly go through. So I want to start and talk about culture. Live in Jamaica, And a big part of our culture, well, doctors were last resort for us, right? So our grandmother would know how to deal with everything that we would have encountered. So with our parents. And so the doctors were not the first point of contact if there are any challenges. The other thing was that everything can be cured with tea or bush. If you don't know this, you're not Caribbean, right? So everything can be cured with tea or bush. And the third thing I wanted to say about our culture was that period pains were normal. Like, girl, you're at this age, you're having a period, this is a part of the road that you need to walk, and you just need to buckle down and go through it. And so that was a rich part of my culture growing up. I remember in particular when I think it was in 2004, I was about 17, thereabout, and I spent a weekend with a church family, and I had like the worst abdominal pain that I could think of that weekend. Even the family that had me in their home didn't know what to do. And we ended up at one of our major hospitals in Kingston, and I spent maybe about 7-8 hours there. I was sent home with a bottle of mineral oil and barrel gin tablets, and I was told that I had constipation. I particularly knew that this was not the situation, but there was nothing that happened outside of that. And that was the first time that I had gone to the doctor about the pain that I was experiencing. Now, when I started to work, because you have to get to work when you get to a certain age here in Jamaica, I was able to fund my first gynecology consultation at age 18. In that discussion, we talked about fibroids, we talked about endometriosis. I had done ultrasounds, and the presence of fibroids at the time was confirmed. And so my doctor and we discussed pain management. And I'll talk about that a little later. And in 2015, now work 2004 to 2015, do the math, carry the one, I did my laparoscopic surgery, and I had my official diagnosis for endometriosis in 2015. And so from 17, 18, dealing with pain, all the way to getting to 11, 12 years later to have an official diagnosis. Now, over the years, there have been so many things that I have done with my life as it relates to trying to manage the pain and manage my condition. The ones in red on your screen are the ones that made my life a living hell. And the ones in blue would have been the ones that gave me some sort of relief along this journey. So I have taken as so many contraceptives from my late teenage years, all the way, the high dose, the low dose, and it just did not do what I was hoping would happen. I have had 4 DNCs in my lifetime, and I've never had a miscarriage, but the doctor that I was seeing at that time thought that that procedure would have helped with my pain and so on. It didn't. There was a point where I actually was bleeding for 6 months straight. And I just don't know, I've taken Depo-Provera. The side effects were horrific. I've also done the Lupron injection. I had Lupron after laparoscopic surgery, and that forced menopausal situation is just not right. That's all I will say. It's not right. And I wouldn't wish it on my enemy. I have mastered painkillers. I've taken every painkiller, the low dose, the high dose, the high end ones. At this point in my life, painkillers do not work for me. I use my mind to go through my painful situations. I've done diet and exercise, and that created a lot of relief. So has herbal and alternative medicine. I do personally have problems with discipline. And so I have been on a yo-yo with eating right and exercising or those things. And so if it's really bad, I will run to this and I get a sense of relief. But I've had challenges being disciplined enough to eat the things that are going to make me feel better and to do the things that are going to make me feel better. So that's been my part with treatment. I want to talk a little bit about family and relationship, because this is a part that I think a lot of people get a little caged about. You don't want everybody to know your intimate life, as it were. And some of the things are a little sensitive, right? So I have a son. He's my only child. He's 12 years old. He is so handsome. You don't have to take my word for it. You can hop over to my IG page afterwards and just comment, says, Sandrina, you were right. Your son is to die for. And I'm just so happy that I have him. I can't even begin to tell you the backstory, but my relationship and family life, I've had painful intercourse. I've had bleeding after intercourse. I'm going to assume there are only women in the audience. If I ever sit on it, I will be bleeding for days afterwards. So there are just some things that I will not necessarily be able to do comfortably in the bedroom. I believe that I would have lost 1 week of my life every month. That's how I look at it. So a lot of my pain, or the intensity of the pain, will be when I'm having my cycle. And that week is the worst week out of every month. And I'm very unable to carry out my regular duties. I get up in the morning, I talk myself into the fact that you do not get a week off from work because you're having endo pains. So you have to go to work. And so I will get up and I will psych myself up and I will go out to work. Those who are closest to me will know the difference. My voice will not be as strong. My steps will be slower. And so they will ask, are you okay? But generally I get what I need to get done. When I get home, I go to my bed, whatever the time is. If I get home at 2 p.m., I go straight to bed. And that's where I stay until I have to do it all over again the next day. I experience pains from my navel to my toes for those 5 or 7 days. It does not decrease. It does not change. And one of the hardest things about this is I live alone with my son at home. So during that week, he rarely gets a cooked meal. I've struggled with wondering if I am the best mother, if I'm doing what's right by him. The Caribbean sisters that I have gained have assured me that it's not my fault. I didn't go and buy endometriosis in the supermarket. And so I am doing, you know, the best that I can. And my 12-year-old has had to learn this and adjust to this. He literally will open the door and say, Mom, it's your female problem time again. And I'll say, yes, son. And he says, okay, cereal and ramens it is. And he's adjusted. But for me, it really, that part of it is what breaks me the most, because I feel like I'm not doing the best as a parent. Where are we on this journey? We're just about to understanding and empathy. I want to say, before Trudy puts up the yellow sheet of paper, that it's not all in our heads. Like, it's not all in our heads. We are not making this up. Can you believe while I'm trying to tell you something, my child is trying to say something in a meeting? So it's not all in our heads. It's not all in our heads. We didn't make it up. We're not imagining our pain like we are really having a challenge. And two, for those who have not felt the pain, have not experienced it, who have no idea what I'm talking about, ask if you don't understand, man. All of us are here to explain. And so we're asking for a little bit of understanding and empathy. I remember some years ago, I was working at a particular place and it was a customer service related function. And I could not I couldn't be happy-go-lucky and smiley on that day. It just was not happening. And my superior at the time, as a form of punishment, sent me to do another function. And the function, what he sent me to do, did not have a chair, did not have a comfortable space. And so I had to be kneeling or bending, which made the pain twice as worse for those who understand. And so the call really is, try to be more understanding for persons who are going through endometriosis and have a sense of empathy so that you can provide the support that is needed. Where am I on this journey? I'm proud of my superpower, that I am an endo warrior, that I am doing it. I am doing it afraid. I'm doing it bravely. I'm doing it in pain, but I'm doing it anyway. And I want to just use this moment to just salute those who are doing it, because we have to. And we will continue to do it with the fact that we know that on this last part of my journey is something that I will never give up. And that's the hope that as the medicine advance, as the doctor's knowledge advance, that there's going to be something that's going to come to the fore, that's going to make our lives easier. My hope is that the pain will go away one day. But until then, I'm not giving up. I will continue to fight. This has been my lived experience. Where am I today? I still have the worst pains ever, but I superimpose because life really does go on. And in the grand scheme of things, there's so many more people struggling with a lot more, you know, than we are. So I'll never give up hope. And thank you so much for listening to my little presentation. Really, really appreciate this opportunity. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandrina, for sharing your lived experience and for being so real and so candid. I really appreciate the focus on empathy. And I think that is a big takeaway for me, particularly, you know, this need that we should have to be more empathetic to people struggling with some things that probably we don't even understand. You know, so Sandrina, thank you. I think that your presentation was very well received. I see the chat going wild. So, and we have quite a few questions coming in as well, so we'll deal with that after. But we are moving right along, and we are going across to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And our next presenter is Miss Odelia Thomas. Odelia was my lifesaver at an endometriosis forum that I had on Monday, coming into my presentation in Dominica via Zoom. And right now she is here to present in this regional forum that we're having. She will be talking about the mental health implications of endometriosis. Just to let our listeners know a little bit about Odelia, she's a counselor in the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment, attached to the Mental Health Rehabilitation Center. Odelia founded the non-profit organization She Is Lotus. So if you ever come across that on social media, Facebook, Instagram, She Is Lotus. Odelia is the founder, and within this organization, she raises awareness of women's health issues, particularly pelvic and menstrual disorders. So I will be handing over now to Odelia, who will be presenting on the mental health implications of endometriosis.
Thank you, Trudy. Good night, everyone. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. I will be discussing the mental health implications of living with endometriosis. And I will be coming to it from out of the way, from the viewpoint of somebody who also lives with endometriosis, as well as somebody who is. So I've been going ahead too fast. So the consideration of mental health implications. Physical health problems can negatively affect your mental health. So any physical health problem, whether you have hypertension, but tonight we're focusing on endometriosis. And several studies have shown that endometriosis can lead to impaired mental health and a decreased quality of life. And this particular mental health impact is noted in women who lack a supportive partner, an understanding support system, and women who experience chronic or severe symptoms. So the research is showing that the more severe your symptoms get, the worse it affects your mental health. So people with endo have to deal with the impact endo has on romantic and intimate relationships, the fertility impact of endometriosis, the productivity impact endo has in school and at work, the uncertainty in a diagnosis, and the emotional impact of cycling through drugs that have side effects. And I would just like to insert here a little bit of my own experience because I think it helps to make the presentation relatable. 31 years old. So that took 20 years and it was an accidental diagnosis. They went in for something else, stitched me back up, waited until I was awake and then told me about endo because there is no endo specialist in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And all through the years, I've been trying different painkillers. As Sandrina mentioned, they don't do anything for me anymore, so I don't even waste my time taking painkillers. In terms of the impact of at work and at school, I had symptoms in from secondary school, and just imagine you're experiencing heavy periods, long flows as a teenager. I was 11, I wasn't even a teenager yet. Having to hear girls talk about how short their periods are, and it's having to not have the same experiences as other girls when I was younger. And when I got into the field of work, sometimes I couldn't make work. And then particularly when I had my period, there were days when the flow was so heavy, I would mess up my work clothes and, mess at work. And I'm lucky in that I work in a health environment. So there was a lot more. But I'm thinking of women who don't work in such an environment. How does it affect your mental health? Just, you're bleeding all over furniture, you can't function at work, and how people are looking at you, that can affect you. And people with endometriosis feel exhausted from not being listened to symptoms, particularly the pain that affects every aspect of their lives. So from age 11, I remember going to different doctors. We started with GPs, just general doctors, until I was able to afford going to a gynecologist when I started working. So just going from doctor to doctor, believe me. And when I went to do my first degree in Trinidad, I even had a male doctor and referred me to a psychiatrist. So imagine having to go through that several times, how that can affect your mental health. So some other endometriosis-related factors that experts believe can lead to the development of mental health conditions include the chronic pelvic pain during sex, length of time until diagnosis, infertility, your age, your relationship, and the way you view yourself and the way you think about yourself. So symptoms such as pain during sex, infertility, and chronic pelvic pain may lead to a negative sense of female identity, which in turn may impact a woman's self-esteem and self-perception. In her ability to have kids. And so when you get to a certain age and there are no kids forthcoming, people start asking questions, making you feel like you're less than a woman. If I had $1, everybody who's ever asked me, when are you going to make your parents grandparents? I would be a millionaire. So the insensitivity of the questions and, oh, your belly looking high today, what happened? You're pregnant? All these questions, when you know what you are going through and what you're experiencing, can really affect how you view yourself as a woman in a Caribbean context. And then in turn, these feelings of low self-esteem and negative perception may then contribute to feelings of anxiety, depression, or emotional distress. Then we come to endometriosis and its impact on intimate relationships. So it is a fear for many women who live with endometriosis. For me, I am still single because in my mind, I'm thinking, who would want to be in a relationship with somebody who has this condition, who has fertility problems, and who sometimes may not be able to have sex, we may not be able to do fun couple of things. And so for me, being by myself is best right now because I don't want to go through the stress of being in a relationship with somebody who's not going to be understanding and not be supportive. So that's a fear for many other persons who live with endometriosis, the fear of abandonment and rejection, frustration and anger, and partnerships breaking down through a lack of understanding and intimacy, real concerns. What about endometriosis at work and in school? Workplaces are often not understanding of time off needed for appointments and when we are experiencing severe symptoms. Persons often feel punished or are subject to sarcasm. I've had women tell me about how other female so hurtful to them, but call them things like mule, and you know, she can't have children. I wonder why she husband's still with her. You know, those sorts of very yourself and how you feel about yourself. How does chronic pain, that's a major symptom of endo, affect your mental health? And so I have here chronic pain. Yes, I see the chat, Trudy. So mental health and pain symptoms exist in a cycle. So this is an example of a pain cycle. So chronic pain can lead to feelings of anger, fear, anxiety, stress, because sometimes you never know where this pain might take you. You might start off having a good day. By the time you get to work, you get a flare. So these feelings can then cause depression and anxiety. And depression and anxiety can mental and emotional distress. And so we're just going around in a circle in this cycle and nothing changes until you deal with the chronic pain. So symptoms of depression and anxiety, I won't go through all, but the major ones to look out for are your trouble sleeping, problems with your appetite, significant and constant fatigue, constant feelings of sadness, emptiness, guilt, anxiety, hopelessness, thoughts of hurting yourself or hurting others, irritability, repetitive and sudden experiences of overwhelm, lack of control of one's body. So these symptoms can give an indication of the state of your mental health. So how can I take care of my mental health? Coming to an end. So some persons might need medications. So you might need an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication. And for non-medical interventions, if you can afford it or it's available for free, please take advantage of it. Joining a support group, taking care of your physical health can help you feel better mentally. Making lifestyle changes such as exercising regularly, getting adequate sleep, and making setting realistic goals and expectations. Because as women, we are considered Wonder Woman or Superwoman. All of these things, and sometimes we just can't. So sometimes we as women have to take a step back and set realistic goals for ourselves. If waking up in the morning and getting off your bed to take a shower is all you could accomplish that day, then you did enough. Communication was closest to you, and I had to learn this the hard way, because when I get overwhelmed, I tend to shut down. And I want people to reach out, but I don't say anything. And so I've had to learn that in order for them to help me and support me, I need to let them know what I need from them, the kind of support I need from them. Find a doctor that takes your concerns seriously. If they are not doing that, fire them and hire a new doctor. Practice mind-soothing activities such as yoga, meditation, mindfulness, journaling, and coloring. I've really gotten into the coloring, you know. If it's something you like, you could try it. Participate in activities that bring you joy and peace, whether that is going to the beach or taking a hike or hanging out with your friends. Recognize warning signs that your mental health is being affected and take action. And to conclude, a holistic approach to the treatment of endometriosis, including counseling and/or therapy to help you cope with the mental health and impact of living with endometriosis, is important. Just as we take care of our physical health, we also need to take care of our mental health. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Odelia, for your presentation. I saw some linkages between some of what you said and what Sandrina said, we came back now to how mental health can be impacted by some insensitive comments that people may make. And once again, why it's so important for empathy, to be the theme that we abide by. So thank you, Odelia, another endo warrior who has bravely shared not just her professional experience as it relates to mental health and endometriosis, but her personal experience as well. So we are moving on to our next presentation. We are moving to St. Lucia, Helen of the West, and we are going to be talking about patient education, advocacy, and empowerment. And Rovin Fervier, who is the founder of Endo Awareness 758, was supposed to be with us, but she sent in her recorded presentation since she was unable to be here at this time. I know that she has April Louis representing the organization right here on the Zoom webinar. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Rovin, although her presentation is recorded, but she is the founder of Endo Awareness 758, and this is a group that raises awareness and advocates for women suffering from reproductive and menstrual health disorders and infertility. Rovin has a strong interest in world affairs and regional integration, and she is the International Relations Officer at the OECS Commission. And the St. Lucia Endometriosis, PCOS, and Adenomyosis support group does some amazing advocacy work via social media. So if you ever need to check them out, you could do so. So we will move now to Rovin's recorded presentation.
Good evening, I'm Rovin Fervier, and I will be presenting on endometriosis patient education, advocacy, and empowerment. I do want to apologize for not being present this evening due to a prior engagement. However, my fellow co-founder and teammate, Ms. April Louis, will be sitting in for me. Let's move quickly into the presentation. So in terms of patient education, we really want to focus on knowing the facts and getting the word out there, okay? And what do we mean by this? We want persons to have a clear understanding as to what is endometriosis, what are the signs and symptoms, how is the condition diagnosed, what are the available treatments, and most importantly, what are the mental health impacts that this condition has on women's everyday life. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, as I know that my colleagues have presented on it. Now, as much as we need to focus on knowing the facts, we also need to be mindful that there is a lot of misinformation out there. And I just want to share a post that we tend to share quite often on our social media platforms, and that is, there is no cure for endometriosis. So I have seen time and time again lots of women and men insinuating that pregnancy, hysterectomy, and menopause are cures for endometriosis. Ladies, this is not the case. If someone is feeding you this information, you need to disregard it. Now, what can you do? How can you help yourself in terms of understanding further what is endometriosis? You can do so by simply doing your own research. Take into consideration that you need to make sure sources are indeed reputable sources. So for example, on our page, due to the fact that we can only post so much per Instagram post or per Facebook post, we have provided our followers with a link where they have access to not only information on endometriosis, but sexual and reproductive health in general. You can also take it a step further and maybe purchase a book on endometriosis. You can also follow support groups online. You can also follow some of our sister organizations. Now, in terms of advocacy, I really want to appeal to you ladies. and that I want you to become your own advocate. I know at times it can feel intimidating, especially if you've gone to numerous doctors and you're getting the same result, you're getting the same attitude, and possibly in some cases, you're getting the same misinformation. So this is a meme that we shared on our page a couple months ago. And here we have an example where the young lady is telling to the doctor, hey, we have very painful periods. What does this mean? The doctor responds, this is normal, just take painkillers. And she states, painful periods is far-fetched, but I have met many women, whether with endo or PCOS, who have shared that their doctors simply disregard their symptoms or downplay their symptoms. What we need our doctors to do, or how we need our doctors to respond, is by this, saying things like, we can perform a series of tests and consultations to get to the root of the problem. Okay, now ladies, when you're having a doctor's visit, you need to prepare yourself, and you also need to make an assessment. You need to determine whether you're getting information from the doctor, whether the information is adequate, whether the doctor is listening to you relaying your symptoms, and whether or not you feel comfortable with your doctor. You do not want to be wasting your time and your money with a doctor where you're not seeing results. And of course, it's going to have an impact on whether or not you're going to get effective medical assistance. So here are some quick tips that can help prepare you during your consultation or your doctor's visit. We advise you to keep a journal, document everything, write everything. If you're someone you don't like to write things down, there are apps available such as Flow, where you can record changes in your menstrual cycle. I'm not only speaking on your actual period, but your entire cycle. Keeping a folder with personal medical documents and records, this is important, especially when you have visited numerous doctors. You may have had numerous surgeries, or you may have received numerous medical treatment. You need to keep this information organized, and you need to relate to the next doctor that you visit so that the doctor will be able to make an assessment based off your medical history. Provide the doctor with extensive details on your cycle. I touched on this earlier. Keep in mind that you need to share your emotional and mental experience as well. And by doing so, your doctor in turn can recommend maybe a counselor or a psychologist that can help in providing you with support. Ask for recommendations. So speak to friends, family, co-workers, do your research, read up on reviews online, especially if you're thinking of having excision surgery. You want to make sure that you're going to go through this with a reputable doctor. So in terms of empowerment, ladies, you need to understand and believe that this illness does not define you. And I know as someone with endometriosis, I can understand that you have moments where you're down and out. You have moments where you're just tired. You're exhausted of having to deal with this condition every single day. But this is one of my favorite quotes, and some of you may be familiar with it. And it reads, endometriosis is resilient and it continues to grow, but women with endometriosis are also resilient and we continue to fight. So here are some ways in which we encourage women to feel empowered. And these are by practicing mindfulness and setting positive affirmations. So for example, we want to remind our ladies, your life is valuable, your voice matters, your experience matters, your time, the energy, the effort, the love. You are worth it. I am worthy of love and affection. When you repeat these affirmations to yourself every day, you begin to believe it, and it can help to push away negative thoughts. Journaling and meditation, as well as self-care. These are important. Again, writing it down. Now, not just recording what you experience in terms of your symptoms, but what are you thinking? How are you feeling at the moment? Meditation, taking some time out, do some deep breathing exercises, and self-care is a must. Do not feel guilty for putting yourself first. Having a support system is key. So try to identify those persons within your family and friendship circles that you can count on, you can depend on, and you can vent to. Also, you need to pay attention to your relationship with your significant other. Is your spouse or your boyfriend or your partner catering to your needs? Do they understand what you're going through? And if it is they do not, you need to take time to educate them and also be patient, because remember, you have been on a journey. So the fact that when you started off in terms of getting your diagnosis, you felt overwhelmed, you felt confused, and you had to go through a point where you accepted your condition and you took bold steps in educating yourself, in other words, becoming proactive, so too will your family members and significant other go through the same journey. So be patient with them. And again, if they don't understand, just explain to them so that they will know how best they can assist you. Also, having a mentor can be very helpful, a counselor who is able to address your mental health needs, and also having a sense of community. We had a vent session last year, and it provided an outlet for ladies to share their journey, what they've been going through. And in essence, it created a sense of community because you're able to speak to other women who are going through exactly what you're going through. Now, what better way to feel empowered? Empowered women empower women. And this is a series that we started in 2019, where we felt it was necessary to highlight women who not only made contributions to raising awareness for reproductive health, but female entrepreneurs, women who had been contributing not only to the St. Lucian Society in terms of women's rights, but also the Caribbean by extension. And you may be able to recognize some faces. We have Ms. Julia Mandeville right here, as well as Odelia. And in 2020, we also featured another group of women. So this is Ms. April Louis. Okay, and we also featured Ms. Trudy Christian. So this is a great way in which we can inspire other women and remind them like, hey, you know what? This person also has endometriosis, but look at what they're doing. Look at how they were able to overcome. So you can learn from them, maybe adopt some of their practices. So this is to let you know that you are not alone. And I have an example here from our 2020 She Inspiration series. And this is Miss Hannah, Mrs. Hannah Wagstaff. And she actually has endo and PCOS, and she's an entrepreneur. So again, she has been through it. She has had surgeries. She has had moments where she didn't know if she would be able to go on. But as she mentions, she has faith. And faith for her means trusting that everything will sort itself out, regardless of how dire the situation may seem. So ladies, I don't have enough time, I'm out of time, but I want to encourage you that feeling empowered is going to help you to build a spirit of resilience, and it's going to help you in terms of how you're going to cope with this chronic illness. Thank you for listening. And again, I apologize for not being present this evening.
Thank you for that presentation sent in by Rovin. Rovin's voice was so soothing. I mean, I was just, you know, glued in to what she was saying. But definitely, advocacy is so important. The work that the individual patient does, you know, to advocate for themselves is important. And I really liked that quote about endometriosis being resilient and growing, but women with endometriosis being resilient as well and continuing to fight. It is indeed interesting that a lot of the founders and co-founders of these advocacy groups across the region are endo warriors themselves, and it shows that resilience and that willingness to fight that is seen, in people faced with such challenging circumstances. So thank you once again, Rovin of Endo Awareness 758, St. Lucia, Endometriosis, Adenomyosis, and PCOS support group. We are moving across now to Barbados, and we're going to have a presentation now on the multidisciplinary approach from Julia Mandeville, who was the first person who I actually came into contact with when I wanted to have some regional outreach. And Julia and her work with the Barbados Association of Endometriosis and PCOS is truly inspiring and an example to all of us across the region, with our own groups on how true advocacy works. So just a little bit about Julia. She's a public health analyst who works in community health, and she's the co-founder of the Barbados Association of Endometriosis and PCOS. She's a public health and advocacy manager of the Barbados Association of Endometriosis and PCOS, and her work focuses mainly on women's health and sexual and reproductive health and rights. So welcome, Julia. Julia, the behind the scenes controller of this whole webinar right now. Julia, I invite you to make your presentation.
Thank you so much, Trudy. So good night, everyone. Thank you again for joining us in this forum. Thanks to my fellow regional counterparts for sharing their experiences and expertise as we seek to collaborate and highlight these local and regional resources and strengthen the regional network of support and care. So as Trudy mentioned, I am the co-founder and the public health and advocacy manager of BAPE. We're going to call it BAPE for short. And it is a registered charity in Barbados, and we seek to educate citizens and advocate for those who have not only endometriosis and PCOS, but also fibroids, adenomyosis, and related conditions. So in my segment, I want to tie in all of the critical points my colleagues so expertly shared with you and conclude with best and promising practices that are associated with improved outcomes for persons who have endometriosis. And some of these things can also be applied to other conditions as well. So as a reminder, endometriosis is a chronic, estrogen-dependent and inflammatory disease of unknown etiology, i.e. we don't know what causes it, and we have no cure. And it's defined by that presence of endometrial-like cells and tissues outside of the uterus. And the range of symptoms can be confusing for the patient as well as the care provider. And so it's really important to recognize that. And unfortunately, many of these this confusion can lead to years of delayed diagnosis, which is why my slide has endometriosis is a whole body disease as opposed to what we initially thought it was. So in short, it's a disease that impacts multiple parts of the individual's body. So here I have diagrams of the main organs that have been indicated with endometriosis. So we have the reproductive system, as we know, but we also have the gastrointestinal tract, which is the most common location of endometriosis outside of the reproductive system. And then you have the urinary tract with the kidneys and bladder located to my top right. And so bladder and uteral involvement are also the most common sites in the urinary system. So within our digestive system, you have the lower colon, which is most commonly involved, followed by the rectum. With urinary endometriosis, unfortunately, that uteral endometriosis are the tubes that go from the kidney to the bladder. If endometriosis impacts those, sometimes it's often asymptomatic and it can lead to obstruction, and that can lead to kidney damage if it's not treated. And then we also have thoracic endometriosis. We have our lungs there. It's a form of extrapelvic endometriosis, and it occurs when these lesions spread to or are found in the diaphragm and the lungs. And it's one of the most complex forms of endometriosis to treat. So why am I talking about all of these different areas? Because endometriosis, again, involves and can be implicated in more than one organ system. In fact, Dr. Cameron Mazat, one of the foremost experts in endometriosis, he stated that endometriosis is not just a reproductive tract disease, but it's one where you can have potentially severe chronic symptoms throughout the entire body, including incapacitating pain, severe chronic fatigue, infertility, immune and endocrinological dysfunction, and damage to multiple organs and tissues. Additionally, we have the clinical comorbidities associated with endometriosis, which are cardiovascular disease, different types of cancer, different types of cancer, autoimmune disease, as well as a lot of mental health conditions. So what can we do? Now that we recognize how extensive and complex endometriosis can be, one thing that can be considered is the development and the integration of networks of care. So let's think about endometriosis's impact on a systems level. We have the physical impact. You have that chronic debilitating pain, chronic fatigue, fertility issues, and potential loss of organs. You have the psychosocial or the social, where you have that stigma around menstruation. You have the depression, you have the anxiety, you have persons not understanding and then trivializing the condition and the symptoms. Financial, you have the dependency on, you could potentially have dependency on pain medication. You also have to consider surgical and treatment costs. And it's known that endometriosis-related pain affects the ability to function physically and mentally, leading to social withdrawal, psychological symptoms, and broader reduction in the quality of life. Further to this, in 2013, it was determined that the annual cost of endometriosis was approximately US $12,000 per woman, and that comprised of 1/3 the direct healthcare costs and 2/3 loss of productivity. So again, far-reaching implications. So what can be done? Multidisciplinary teams. These work with an involved coordinated effort between specialists with expertise in their discipline in the management of the patient. Endometriosis is a chronic condition, and an integrated approach involving a multidisciplinary team is really essential in optimizing patient management. These teams ensure that a full range of options are considered early, and Abeesha spoke about early intervention, so patients receive appropriate and timely treatment. Typically, it is led by an experienced gynecologist or gynecological surgeon, and they work with different specialists. You have urologists, radiologists, pain specialists, gastroenterologists, colorectal surgeons, cardiothoracic surgeons, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, and again, that patient support network that Odelia as well as Rovin just mentioned. Typically, for complex cases, you would have the gynecologist along with, again, with the colorectal surgeon or the urologist. But in general, multidisciplinary care can be applied to most cases as it pertains to endometriosis, because they all play an important role in providing adequate treatment, as well as increasing the likelihood of providing consistent, evidence-based and cost-effective care. So as we have been doing in our own countries and in this forum here, patient support groups and organizations do provide an aspect of social and emotional support, but we can also collaborate with medical and healthcare professionals and researchers and policymakers. And this is important as it increases awareness and identifies gaps in knowledge as well as the research, and that can promote more research, which can then be applied. And this particular model has actually been integrated in the national healthcare system, NHS, National Healthcare Service. I'm sorry if I butchered, but it's NHS in the UK. It's actually something that has been integrated, and it's also been applied in certain centers within the US, because it's evidence-based and it is considered best practice at this point in time. It has been shown to lead to better results in patient outcomes. truly for best outcomes, diagnosis, treatment, and management of endometriosis, there needs to be collaboration. It needs to be collaborative, multidisciplinary, and multifaceted. And this is where patient-centered care has to be and can be introduced, because as Abeesha mentioned, it has to be holistic, has to be multidisciplinary, and it has to be patient-centered. And so when we look at patient-centered care, this is a holistic approach to healthcare, and it focuses on all facets of well-being, and it considers the person's emotional state, mental state, spiritual state, and needs, as well as their social and financial needs. The primary goal of this care model is to improve health outcomes, and it's accomplished through partnerships between the patient, the care team, the family, and the community. And it encourages that shared decision-making and active participation from all parties. Health and healthcare does not start and end at the healthcare provider's office or the hospital. So one must also consider the environment and the community when we talk about treatment, management, and improved outcomes. And this is these are the 8 principles of patient-centered care. I'm not going to go through all of them, but as you can imagine, there are 3 reasons why this type of care is encouraged. It helps empower patients to engage in their care. It typically results in higher patient satisfaction, and it results in better patient outcomes, because if they feel supported, if persons feel supported and understood, they are far more likely to be more adherent to a plan. And it also leads to customized, individualized care. And as as Trudy said earlier, endometriosis, it's different for everyone. And so you cannot have a cookie cutter approach when you're thinking about endometriosis treatment and management. So we know that that is all theoretical, and that would be ideal in a perfect world. We don't live in a perfect world. So there are going to be potentially a number of barriers to implementation and maintenance of the multidisciplinary approach and patient-centered care, and it will more than likely require substantial efforts to reach these goals. However, with sustained and collaborative efforts, so I'm tapping into the hope that Sandrina mentioned earlier, we can definitely work to improve our outcomes. We have the information, we have the evidence, we can put it into practice, we can adapt it to our context, we can recognize, also recognizing our resource constraints as individual islands as well as a small region. It calls for innovation and collaboration. And while we are educating and advocating, and that is great, you also need to move to action. We need to also have those relevant resources available and identified to help persons improve their health-related quality of life. And as multifaceted as these conditions are, the treatment and management approach should be as well. So I'm just going to keep repeating multifaceted and multidisciplinary until the end of this presentation. We need to work together and consider that approach for our patients, for our community. And again, as well, this forum is for endometriosis. Many of these theories and models can be adapted and actually have been for other chronic conditions. So we really think it would be great if we can also have this apply to endometriosis within the region. It is imperative that the knowledge base of the patient and the practitioner is broadened for all options of management and treatment to be discussed. That patient-practitioner partnership is built on trust, respect, and a shared understanding. And when that happens, that typically enjoys improved outcomes. Awareness is key, but we also need to include that community education, advocacy, and engagement with major stakeholders and policymakers to discuss what changes and interventions can be considered for these improved outcomes. We also encourage and invite more research, which is why I'm happy that we were able to listen to Abby as she shared her research, because more research really does need to be done on these conditions and their impact in the region. Too often, the information that we do use is not context or culturally specific, and we do know change needs to happen. We need to have that information that is more applicable to our populations. So in all of this, we need to work in community. which is why I'm so happy we were able to have this forum, because we're working in community just by doing this. We need to work in community and recognize that endometriosis is a complex, multi-system and multifactorial condition. It is not, nor has it ever really been, just a bad period. We have done such a disservice to so many in teaching that. Please, I am imploring, we need to understand the dismissiveness, sorry, getting emotional. We need to end the dismissiveness and move towards more understanding and support. So let us continue to work together in order to better support a friend, a family member, a colleague, employee, community member, or regional sister or brother, the patient and the practitioner, as we work to improve overall health-related quality of life of those impacted. So these are my resources, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you so much for that presentation and how important it is to treat endometriosis as what it is, which is something that affects the entire being, right? The entire body, and not just, you know, a reproductive disorder. So I appreciate your presentation, and that brought us to the end of our presentations, and it takes us now to the question and answer session, where we will engage with the listeners and take the questions that they have posed. So what I will do, I will take the questions. Some are specifically addressed to certain panelists. So for those, I will, you know, call out that particular panelist to answer. But for those questions which are generic or just general, anybody who chooses or wishes to answer can go ahead and do so. I'll start with this one. One of our listeners says, I was diagnosed and did surgery, and it came back, endometriosis diagnosis, but I really want to have a baby. Would you recommend doing another surgery? What are the chances for natural conception? The doctor said IVF is not an option. So this is coming in from one of our listeners. Does anybody want to touch on that? Of course, remember our initial disclaimer, this is not meant to be medical advice. None of us here are medical practitioners. We are health advocates, women's health advocates, and some of us are public health practitioners, but we are not distributing medical advice. But this question is you know, pertaining to fertility and endometriosis, which I think a few people touched on in their presentations. I don't know if anybody wants to comment surrounding that fertility issue.
I definitely am not going to be, I don't have I can't provide medical advice. I would be curious as to why the doc would say IVF is not an option. And then I would also ask if you have maybe gotten a second opinion. So I basically am just giving you more questions, sorry for your question. But because we're not medical providers, and there's still some information that I think we would need to have before we could maybe even tell you how best to advocate for yourself. I don't know, Abeesha, do you have any suggestions with that?
Thank you so much, Julia. What crossed my mind though was quality intervention and the importance of quality intervention here, and the patient being aware of what exactly is quality intervention. And even though we all know the issues with endometriosis, and it's a complex one, it's very complex, but as patients, we need to really look into quality intervention. So we really need to seek out those doctors who really have a proper grasp and understanding of endometriosis. They definitely are aware and abreast of current research and best practice. And yeah, we need to seek them out because sometimes they are very far and few apart, Thank you.
Abeesha, maybe you should just stay on because the next question I wanted to bring forward is something that is directed to the Trinidad and Tobago Endometriosis Association, where one of the listeners spoke about their doctor at Mount Hope being great, but needing more as it relates to knowledge of Zoladex. And for those of us who get relief from Zoladex, we know how difficult it is to survive without it after 6 months, the 6-month course. So this listener is asking, is there any way that the Trinidad and Tobago Endometriosis Association can help with this situation?
Okay, thank you very much, Trudy. The first thing I'll say is that the patient needs to understand the side effects of Zoladex. And Zoladex is one of those drugs that can put the patient into a state of pseudomenopause. And although the patient will receive ADVAC, there's still the risk of developing menopausal symptoms. So she needs to understand that properly. I understand that relief is needed, and I do empathize and sympathize with her because we all know how endometriosis can be. But she needs to focus on the side effects, one. The second thing I would suggest for her is probably to look into some sort of complementary approach to help with her symptoms. She could probably look at some sort of dietary approach, probably look into pelvic for physical therapists as well. As it relates to our work with working with medical doctors, well, we do have in place as endometriosis special interest group, and that's solely for health and medical professionals, and they look exclusively at the clinical management of the disease. But that plan is really a long-term plan, and why I say that, we intend to advance our work with medical professionals. We started a few years ago, and this year we felt as though it would have reached a climax with our recent seminars. Yeah, so we actually have some buy-in now. Buy-in actually takes a long time, so we have some buy-in, so we are actually going to push from there. Yeah, so we are going to meet with the different stakeholders to see what we can do really to improve health outcomes for patients. Yeah, I hope that answered her question. Thank you.
Okay. And you just mentioned pelvic floor physical therapists. We did have a listener who indicated that they are a pelvic floor physical therapist working in conjunction with pain management specialists to help manage pain pre and post-op. Pelvic floor physical therapist, pain specialist, knowledgeable in endo, and excisionist, are hard to come by in the United States. So this person is asking who manages endo in the Caribbean, asking for a resource for that type of endo management in the Caribbean, pelvic floor physical therapy, pain management specialist, excisionist.
Yeah, I can speak for resources available in Barbados. We do have, I know of at least one pelvic floor pelvic health physiotherapist in Barbados. She's actually the vice chair of our board and our immediate past president. I do know we have a number of pain specialists. I can't speak to whether or not they're knowledgeable in endo, but the hope is that with all the advocacy work and engagement that we have done, they are. I do believe there is a team that has been formed within a private clinic in Barbados where a pain specialist is part of that multidisciplinary team. And so, yes, we do have that available. And then on that team, there is a gynecologist who does perform excisions. So I think that is how I can answer it for Barbados. When you say in the Caribbean, I think that's a complex question because the Caribbean is made up of so many different islands, and all of our, these situations are so unique to the different islands. So I will give the floor over to my colleagues so that they can also share about their resources.
Yes. Anybody else with any local resource that they can point to, as it relates to pelvic floor physical therapy or pain management? I saw somebody in the chat saying that there is pain management specialists. There are pain management specialists in Jamaica. I don't know if any of the other presenters have any information about their particular island and what is offered.
Okay, so Trudy, if I may, I can speak a bit about Trinidad and Tobago. So there is one pelvic floor physical therapist that we know about. She has been working very closely with the association, and she'll soon be a member of our endometriosis special interest group. Yeah. So I'm not too sure exactly the person who is asking the question where she is currently located and where she's looking for this assistance. And Julia spoke to that a while ago. But with regards to Trinidad and Tobago, yes, there's one pelvic floor physical therapist that we know of. Okay. And we can definitely provide that information. Yeah.
The person seems to be living in the United States, and this person is a pelvic floor physical therapist. So it seems they were just asking, who does that sort of work in the region, as is available in the States. So that seems to be the line that the question was taken. So, okay, we should maybe move on. Odelia, you wanted to say something about St. Vincent? I noticed you unmuted.
Yeah, well, we don't have any physical therapist. These people, none of these specialists here. So most and Tobago. And that brings me back to Julia's slide with the different impacts of endo, the financial aspect, in that it's very, very expensive because we have to go private practitioner, and it's really, really expensive. Dr. Barker from Barbados, he does excisions. He started at Vincent. He used to come once a month before pre-COVID. He informed me this week that he is trying to come back to St. Vincent in May and bring his equipment and doing some laparoscopies for women in St. Vincent who need that treatment. So for women in St. Vincent, what has had to happen is that doctors or specialists, try to set up private clinics here. So yes, he is really nice, Dr. Barker. So for the women, see some Vincentian women in the chat, Dr. Barker will be here in May, hopefully, if COVID does not rear its ugly.
Okay.
Not Victoria Medical, Annesville Medical Center, and speak to the secretaries.
Okay. Odelia is frozen.
Clinic in St. Vincent. He is not a pelvic floor physical therapist, but he does do pain management, but not pain management. He's a physical therapist, so he does a lot of stretching and all of that. But for the person who's
Odelia?
some equipment and so on that Ozari will not have. But he have really good information on relieving your pain and so on. But pelvic floor is completely different.
Okay.
Yes.
Odelia, you were breaking up a bit, so I would just advise you, maybe I know you will list in some specific names, and resources.
Yes.
Put it in the chat.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Yes, because we missed a part of what you were saying.
No problem,
So,
no problem.
Yes.
Also, Trudy, there are actually a lot of questions in the chat. I'm not sure if you saw that as well. So I don't know if you want me to field those to you as well.
Yes, please do, because I was just looking at the Q&A screen. Okay. So I didn't look at the chat, but I have one. Let me just shoot this one out to Sandrina. One of the listeners asked about the foods that you feel are helpful, because Sandrina, you did mention in your presentation that sometimes diet and exercise, help. So this person is interested in what foods do you find helpful for managing your symptoms?
Okay, so Sandrina is multitasking right now.
Okay.
I can provide the answer because I let her know that the question was posed.
Was coming? Okay.
Okay, so I also want to make a disclaimer that, again, everything, what works for one person might not necessarily work for someone else. So you also have to bear that in mind. For Sandrina, she says no rice, no flour, no gluten, lots of veggies and fruits, no alcohol, no caffeine. And then she ended it off by saying, see why I couldn't be disciplined, because all of these things. But yeah, a lot of the times, flour, gluten, alcohol, caffeine, red meat are associated with that inflammatory process. And so a lot of experts would say, try to stick to an anti-inflammatory diet as much as possible with endometriosis. And I remember I attended one of these sessions put on by TTEA, and they had a nutritionist, it was Abeesha, and she outlined that, as well as other types of foods known as the FODMAP and non-FODMAP groups. And she was really extensive with that presentation as to what types of foods and the type of potential dietary changes could either be facilitators or barriers of managing endometriosis.
Okay, so that's that. Julia, I guess we will take some from the chat.
Sure.
Yes, let's see what's going on here.
First one, is April still there?
April is there.
Okay.
Hi, yes, I'm there.
Hi.
Hi.
Do you guys ever plan to have doctors visit the different countries to assist with endo? We in St. Lucia really need assistance.
Hi, this is a conversation that we have had. In fact, in addition to getting doctors to visit St. Lucia, we would also like to sensitize our doctors via another specialist, most likely from overseas. But right now we do not have the resources to do so, but hopefully it's something that we will be able to actually execute in the near future. But as of right now, no, we do not have any immediate plans.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to toss this to Abeesha. For those of you who don't know, Abeesha started advocating for long before, I think, BAEP. So I see her as my mentor, even though she might not necessarily know that, and the TTEA. What would you guys recommend for bowel endometriosis? Again, we disclaim that we're not doctors.
Yeah, thank you for that disclaimer, Julia.
No problem.
We are not doctors, and thank you for throwing me into this one as well. So bowel endometriosis is could be very distressing for the patient, and the first thing we would advise is that you find a doctor who can really help you treat or manage endometriosis holistically. And why I say holistically is that, well, we know the issues we are faced with in the region. yeah, in terms of excision surgery and so forth. I really don't want to get into that. But what can usually help an endo patient who suffers with bowel endometriosis is dietary approaches. So Julia spoke about that a bit, where you look at specific diets. Most of the time it is advised that you start off with the elimination diet, and I know Fadwa is here. Hi, Fadwa. And you move from there. We also have to remember that each patient is different, and so the approach would be different, and it needs to be individualized. I touched on that a bit. And the two diets that are touted, you know, for endometriosis patients are the FODMAP diet, as well as the anti-inflammatory diet, because endometriosis is a highly inflammatory disease. And if you eat certain triggers, you know, that will trigger your inflammation, you're just going to actually compound your problem. I can speak personally to bowel endometriosis because I have had a lot of challenges with bowel endometriosis. I had actually my intestines ruptured in 2013. I developed gangrene, and so I ended up having emergency surgery. I was in ICU for 9 days. I was hospitalized for a month, you know, and I'm still struggling with my diet. Somebody spoke about discipline. I think it was Sandrina, and that's a big issue for me, because when you think, okay, you are disciplined enough, then something happens and you realize, okay, you don't have the kind of discipline you thought you had. For me, I know what my triggers are, and it speaks to the literature. So sugar, refined sugar, is definitely a no-no. Absolutely nothing with gluten, absolutely nothing with dairy. Preserved food is a no-no. So basically, as I will tell my team at the TTEA when we're having a meeting, this month was particularly difficult for me to maintain my diet because it was extremely busy for us. And I am basically in the kitchen every day making every meal, because that's the only way I can actually know what I'm eating and it's safe for me to eat, you know? So in addition to finding a doctor to effectively manage your condition, you can look into complementary therapies as well. And dietary approach is one of them, particularly where bowel endometriosis is concerned. So I hope I answered your question. Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
All right, so I think we have covered many of the questions. There is one, maybe I will take this as the last one. I know we wanted to wrap up, you know, within a 2-hour time frame. So I will take one, and I think this is a quick response. The most highly recommended form of treatment, that's one, and this was already mentioned in the presentations, but somebody could just reiterate. And another one about side effects of Mirena IUD, and if anyone has experienced negative side effects of Mirena IUD. So, Julia?
Okay.
The most highly recommended form of treatment. You know, you're going to say excision.
Well, yes, excision surgery is considered the gold standard. And in a perfect world, we'd have excisions. Well, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have endometriosis, right? But outside of that, we would also have persons that are trained excision specialists available across the world. The unfortunate thing about that is we don't at this point in time. So we have to work within, you know, again, our resource constraints and understanding what is readily available to us. So I would say I would highly recommend that multidisciplinary approach, that team approach with your practitioner and other specialists that might need to come in, a dietitian, a nutritionist, a mental health expert, to help you really maintain or improve your quality of life. Because at the end of the day, you can have excision surgery, but the endometriosis can also return. But it's important to have a standard, a quality of life that you are happy with. Because we had a session with a fertility specialist on Monday for BAEP, and one of her keynote points was quality of life above all else at the end of the day. So you need to work with a team, have that support system readily available, so that that is your treatment. That is your way of managing endometriosis. I don't know if anyone else wants to add or I don't know, share something that is, yeah, something else along with that.
To add to what Julia said, again, I will go back again to quality intervention and the importance of quality intervention. I feel like I can't stress it enough. I guess it's because I'm aware of the issues globally, and we in the Caribbean will feel it even stronger than the rest of the world. But quality intervention is really what will make a huge difference with excision surgery. During the webinars we held earlier this month, a few of our doctors presented locally and abroad, those who have dedicated their practice solely to endometriosis. And what their research speaks to is that once endometriosis is done properly, and 99% of it is exercise, then the possibility of reoccurrence is significantly reduced, and you can enjoy a better quality of life. So persons, as a patient, you may be inclined to believe that, you know, you have to undergo several surgeries, but the fact of the matter is, it's the quality of the surgery. And in order for you to get that quality surgery, you have to find the right doctor. Now, for us in the region, as I mentioned before, we feel it so much more because our resources are limited, and Julia couldn't stress on that enough. And I heard Odelia when she said that the financial implications, and I agree with her 100%. But for those patients who can, until changes are made in the Caribbean, perhaps you need to consider traveling for surgery to get that quality intervention that you require. Now, it will not be inexpensive, but at least, you know, you're gonna give yourself the best that is perhaps available. Yeah? Thank you.
Thank you, Abeesha. And just one last thing, if anybody wanted to comment on Mirena IUD, anybody who probably has tried it or has had one implanted. I don't know if any of our panelists, it doesn't seem so.
I personally avoided it. It was one of the options that was presented to me, but I personally, again, this is my personal experience, I've had negative experiences with implants before. So with the options that were presented, I prefer to have been, to use a pill that I take daily, because I can manage that myself, and I feel as though I'm in more control, but that's me personally.
So unlike Julia, I did try it. The only comment I would give, and this is my personal experience, because I mean, my case was horrible. My endometriosis was really horrible. So all I can say is that it didn't do anything for me. It was very ineffective. So after some time, it just had to be removed. But I have met patients for whom it worked. Yeah. And again, it goes back to individualized care. Each patient is different. So what will work for Julia definitely will, it may not work for me. You know, so the patient has to find what works for her.
That has definitely been an overarching theme of the discussion, how individual the condition is, and therefore treatment and management is also an individual process. So individualized care, yes, Julia. So I
That
think,
is so true.
yes. So I think we are.
Sorry, could I just quickly jump in on a question? So there was somebody had asked a question about endometriosis and fibroids, and I think it was answered online, but I wanted to also just jump in a little bit. So the question was whether endometriosis could be misdiagnosed as fibroids. So what I wanted to say with that is that fibroids and endometriosis have very similar symptoms. So there is the possibility for misdiagnosis both ways. I think it's also important to note that 30% of patients that have fibroids also have endometriosis. So I think it's important for women to understand that if they are, I can speak from the fibroid side. So if you have fibroids and they're a certain size, so they're kind of small and you're still having excruciating pain, research suggests that it might be that you also have endometriosis. So I think it's important for women to understand that so that they can go and determine whether they have both fibroids and endometriosis so that they can get the right care. And on the other side, if you have endometriosis, you may also have fibroids. So I think it's important for women to understand that so that they can be treated for both and get the care that they need, because they may still have residual pain that's coming from the other condition. So I just wanted to answer that.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you. So I believe that's it. I hope that we have, touched on as many questions and concerns and comments as we could. It was a really interesting discussion, as I promised you all at the start that it would be. And I would really just like to end off by thanking all our panelists, all these ladies who bravely presented this evening and engaged in this course. I will begin from the north and move my way south. From Jamaica, we had Miss Sandrina Davis, who shared her lived experience. And then we moved across to St. Kitts and Nevis with Begho, who really spoke to us about the barriers that exist to diagnosis. And then we moved down to Dominica, I believe, if my geography is correct. And that was me. And I spoke a bit about the symptoms and diagnosis. We also went down then to St. Lucia, where Rovin spoke to us about empowerment and advocacy. And then to St. Vincent and the Grenadines with Odelia Thomas, who spoke to us about mental health implications of endometriosis. And then to Barbados, where Julia spoke to us about the multidisciplinary approach, and the Trinidad and Tobago, where Abeesha spoke to us about this hype for early intervention and why early intervention is so critical. So thank you to all the panelists across the region. We have joined together in this very synergistic way on a virtual means, but we're able to share our information, our experiences across the region. I think it was an amazing session. And I would like to thank the listeners who joined in. And of course, our information, because I saw someone asking about the information of the panelists, the information of the different organizations of the panelists this information is being shared right now. So feel free, of course, to look up the different organizations across the region and follow them on social media. So ladies, thank you. And we hope to do this again, right?
And thank you so much for guiding us through this session so wonderfully. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And I never showed a red card, so that was good. Thank you. Good evening, everybody.